add to the array that's already on the roof. But that will involve roof work, for which I am, just like electrics and plumbing and general DIY, wholly unqualified.
Well, that's useful because there's a hole involved.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Pubisode. Thank you for joining us as we are all reintroduced to the notion of pain by Ben. Pun pain. We need a name for the pub.
Ooh.
What pub are we in, gentlemen?
I mean, the Drowning Point sounds pretty...
The
good name for a pub.
Oh, okay. God, this is a bit bleak for me. Yeah, okay. We are sat in the Drowning Point, a pub under the sea, where the crayfish come for their krill. I assume they eat krill. I don't know.
Who doesn't?
The seals come for their fish. The polar bears come for their seals. And the humans come to kill fucking everything for no good reason.
Capitalism.
Welcome to the Drowning Point. That's the Drowning Point. Mass extinction. That's why. I'm not sure why that's the name of my autobiography, but that's why this pub is named thusly. So, let's pull up a stool and get something to drink. What are you having, gentlemen? Oh, introduce yourselves as well.
I'm Ben Levy Griffiths, and I am drinking the remnants of a snowball.
A snowball? What's a snowball?
So it was a drink that my mother-in-law introduced me to over Christmas, which is Advocat. Lemonade, some lime, and some maraschino cherries, which are in the bottom of this glass.
You lost me at the cherries.
It all tastes a bit like sherbet.
It looks like vomit.
Yeah,
it's fantastic.
I consider Snowball to be a staple of like a 90s Christmas in the valleys.
Yeah, with eggnog.
So my mother-in-law used to work in a pub in the 80s. And it was popular back then.
It was Snowball and Baby Sham. Those are the two drinks around Christmas.
What is Baby Sham?
It's probably just like Prosecco, I imagine, but shit.
Well, Ben, I find your drink choice hideous. Thank you. Jamie.
And hello, I'm Jamie, and as it comes to no surprise to anybody at this point, I'm drinking yet another mead. This is called the Mead of Brigid, and it's So
did you make it from Brigid?
Unfortunately, no.
Poor girl.
I mean, you look at her face on the bottle, and she looks like she's had a bit of a rough time. Just sort of blank stares.
She looks dead.
Well...
She looks like a corpse.
I mean, mead is an ancient drink, so, she can't hang around forever. But it is quite a strong mead. But I've only got half a bottle, though, which is sad. But we'll see how we go.
So actually, this is the first time I've seen your mead mug, and it is exactly what you're imagining, ladies and gentlemen. Exactly. It's like something Tony Robinson would find on Time Team and then declare to be part of a Roman villa.
Well, funny you should say that, because I stole it. I got it from the...
Is this how you got disgraced as an Egyptologist? You stole artifacts and began drinking out of them down the pub.
If only it were that simple. I got it from the St Fagans Living History Museum of Wales. They've got like St Fagans, which is not a slur. It is a Welsh word. I don't know what it means. It's a saint, apparently. It's like a living history museum, and it's lovely. They've got a traditional... sweet shop and a traditional newsagents and grocery shop. Some of the things they sell are like handmade pottery, mead cups, and it's a wonderful place to visit.
They basically have pilfered, in the same way that the British Museum have pilfered artifacts from across the world. The St Fagans
appropriated for their own sake.
St Fagans has pilfered a building across Wales.
You know how in Despicable Me, Gru, the main villain, his thing is like stealing landmarks and putting them in his own house. That's what St Fagans Museum does. Is it took a whole street and rebuilt it brick by brick in this museum. It took a pub and rebuilt it. And everybody, rather than the outcry that you would associate with this kind of theft, everybody in Wales went, tidy, thank you, preserving our history. I will pay you, oh no, it's free entry, so I will just come visit it now and again.
So like you have to pay for parking.
Yeah, that's what they get.
So there's a model pub in a building.
It's not an actual pub.
There's an actual pub in a building, like
no.
the set of Harry Potter.
Outside.
Yeah, it's like a massive park kind of thing.
Okay.
Basically, there's this pub called the Vulcan that was very historic in Cardiff and very much loved, very much a cultural icon. That was about to get demolished. There was a massive petition to save it. So the museum demolished it brick by brick and then rebuilt it in exactly the same way. So they just transported the whole thing to the park.
Jamie, this This depresses me intensely because we had a historic pub in England, the Crooked Pub, that there was a petition to save, and the owners burnt it to the ground and then committed insurance fraud.
Yeah, but that's because you've got the Conservatives in power.
There it is. Probably. I mean, at this point, I'd pin anything on those idiots. I really would. And I'm John, by the way. Hello. And I am enjoying a lovely 10-year-old tawny port, which has, I hope you can see that, gentlemen, a lovely reddish quality.
That does look nice.
It's really beautiful. It looks a bit like sloe gin, and it's going down very smoothly. And I bought it with some tip money on the way home from the gig, because there were tips, which was wild and unexpected, because, you know, we're paid performers. So that was a nice touch from the host. That was very, very good. Shout out to Chris Francis. You're a gentleman and a scholar, and you have the moustache of an Elizabethan explorer.
That's an amazing thing to put on like your LinkedIn profile. That's
Yeah.
That could open doors just with a moustache that fabulous. I've not seen it, but I'm imagining it, and it's impressive.
It was quite something. It was quite something. He was a good chap too. Right. Shall we discuss the room?
Go on then.
So I'm a bit annoyed because I came up with that whole air pressure thing, and I thought it was fiendish. And you fuckers figured it out immediately. Then immediately figured out the 5-5 thing, which I thought was also fiendish, but then lost 15 minutes because you couldn't work out how to use the puppet fish. Genuinely, you had the hard parts of that room solved in 7 minutes, pretty much on discovery.
I will maintain that anything that you tell us during the intro is immediately left as part of the intro when we start the puzzle.
But it's the best place.
Will you maintain that?
Virtually every puzzle that I've been in, and normally actually ones by Mike. Mike will mention something that is seemingly inconsequential during the introduction, and it is often crucial. Yes.
I've taken to this too because it's jolly good fun and it makes people listen.
Well, not as hard as you'd like.
Listen, children.
It makes you repeat yourself when we go, I don't know.
And then, would you like me to give you some of the intro?
Please.
Say it. Back to Herman Merman.
Which is glorious, by the way.
Yeah, the pressure puzzle. I was debating whether or not to re-mention the wheel that he turns to do the air pressure, and I decided I should re-mention it because when I put elements like that before, they've been lost. But having re-mentioned it, Ben, you immediately turn to it. As soon as you're in the room, you're like mucking around with the damn wheel and figuring out exactly how it worked and what it did and its limitations. And I thought, oh, fuck. It was only 40 minutes before we recorded that I made a change to the room where the key couldn't just float back through the floor. Because I was looking at it thinking, they're never going to do that. And it's a fun way to go, you could have solved it in 10 seconds, guys, at the end. And then I had another thought of, what if they do? I cannot do a DOM. I cannot have my room solved in single-digit minutes. And the mechanic of the sliding doors or the sliding glass panes up and down. Yeah, I was really hoping that you'd figure that out first, get the flow switch sorted, have the water flowing, do the first two, and then be absolutely stumped on why the third one wouldn't go down far enough to let the key through. I was like, this will be the kind of thing. The first two worked, but now this one won't. What will you do? Oh, no. And you just went, okay, I'll stick my hand in and you go over there.
If it's any consolation, John, I had not a single clue about how that bit would have been solved. If Ben wasn't there, I would probably fail because I wouldn't have thought to change the water pressure to get that to do its thing.
It just hadn't, that whole thing hadn't sunk.
Just hadn't thought to connect the two things. So I'm glad we got someone who understands how, stuff works.
Well, it was only that. The air pressure bit seemed very obvious to me. That was very nice. But right up until the very last moment, I still could not understand when you said there was a hole in the glass that was like a partition. I just could not wrap my head around that at all. I couldn't picture it. When you said a pane of glass, I very much saw it in the floor, looking down, as opposed to segregating the room.
Yes, I drew those, and when you draw them, it's very clear what they are and how they work. Okay, Ben's showing me his picture now, and I think he's drawn amputated stick men.
Well, this is the other thing, is that for some reason when you said handle, I heard lever. So I there were 3 levers in the ground.
Okay. Yeah, so I could have described that better. Do you have any questions about the room?
How early did the Third Reich mermen bit come into this? Was
The Fish Reich.
sorry, the Fish Reich.
The Fish Reich, which is a play on the Fifth Reich, which would be the next one because the Nazis were they the Fourth Reich? I think so.
How many Reichs? Write in. How many Reichs have there been?
Yeah, how many Reichs have there been, guys? I think the Holy Roman Empire is the first. Is Charlemagne the second?
Did Charlemagne come before the Holy Roman?
Oh no, hang on. Charlemagne is the Holy Roman Empire. What am I on about? Yeah, don't know how many Reichs. Lots of Reichs. So this entire thing began with Jamie. It was Jamie's idea. With his Walt Disney Nazi officers thing. I thought, what if they were under the sea? Because that there's a couple of silly sci-fi movies about them like hiding on the moon or something. And I thought, well, no, submarines, U-boats, that's very them. And then I thought mermaids, and then I wrote a list, and it had Nazi things on the left and mermaid things on the right. There's the list.
Which is odd. You'd have thought it would be the
So,
other way
listeners, John's literally showing us a picture of his notebook that has a 2-column table. On the left, he's written as the header Nazi things, and on the right, he's written as the header mermaid things. This is great.
So, and the first thing we've got Nazi things, fascism. Mermaid thing, sparkling tails. Nazi things, leather uniforms. Mermaid things, clamshell bras. Nazi things, camp. Mermaid things, camp. Nazi things, unfeasible mad technology. Mermaid things, unfeasible fish technology. Nazi things, megastructures. Mermaid things, shipwrecks. Nazi things, Walt Disney. Mermaid things, Walt Disney. And then went with tiger tank, tiger fish tank. King tiger tank, king tiger fish tank. Human experiments. That was where I ended. I then started thinking of The Little Mermaid and wrote a song.
And you can't tee that up without giving us a rendition of that, John.
Yeah. Okay, so here we go.
Is there backing music?
Should we
no,
do it?
I wanted to
pretend that I'm like a crustacean.
Unter the sea. Unter the sea. Life's so much purer than your with the Führer. Take it from me. If you're running out of time, just take the Tirpitz down the Rhine. You'll always be winning when you're geschwimming unter the sea.
That is glorious.
I don't know why I did that.
I'm so glad you did, though.
I have, no, and then on the next page I just wrote Heil Fischler.
I hope that you develop that and submit it for Christmas #1 this year.
Make sure it's a charity single, for God's sake, otherwise.
Yeah. Good. And then I spent several pages desperately trying to work out how this hatch mechanism was going to work, and drew all of the dumb things, just shapes. That did not work before I finally settled on something which I thought was pretty straightforward and easy to understand. Ben. And that was it. And apart from that, I just wrote down some silly Nazi mermaid names. Hermann Merman.
That's a good name.
Herr Fischler. Herring Goering.
Nice.
That sort of thing. And then it was 5:00 today, and I panicked and wrote it all.
I like that it seems, by your own admission, it seems to have been sort of 15% planning, 85% Nazi fish pun names, which is beautiful.
Basically, yes. Which ended up being unhelpful in the extreme. One beta puzzle that didn't make it in was that I wanted to get you guys to sing the song and have to like rearrange the words to make the lyrics. But then I realized it's just so hard. Once you scramble them like that, it's just going to be too hard to do.
That's fair.
So I dumped it for something easier.
I also don't think that I'm talking purely for myself, I don't think I could have done anything near as well as you, as faithful as your rendition.
Look, there's an offensive post-colonial accent in the original show. So yeah, why not just make it an offensive European accent?
That's fair.
I ask you.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I mean, last episode in the pub, we were discussing about how there should be more. We should try a musical episode, and I mentioned that there is a virtual musical escape room episode with puppets. And
What?
oh yes, it's called Keeper and the Fungus Among Us. It's a virtual musical escape room that's entirely casted with puppets. So that's a fun team building exercise for the production crew. But yeah, I think escape rooms and musicals go well together. Let's do it. And we've already got one song.
Jamie, you're signing us up for editing hell. Hell, I tell you. What are you doing? Shut up. Oh dear.
Just
a scary musical.
Ben, how did it feel coming back as a solver?
Bewildering.
Yeah.
No, genuinely, and it wasn't the puzzle at all, Tron. The puzzle was really good.
I know.
I tell you what, it's so. I'd forgotten that one of the skills that you develop being on this podcast is being able to take in what somebody is saying and be able to picture it in your head, right? To be able to interpret it actually pretty quickly. I kind of drew everything down as I always used to, and like you saw when I showed it to you, it was not a good representation at all of what you were saying to us. But it worked. Just trying
you came to the correct conclusions very quickly.
Well, some of them, and then thankfully Jamie the others. And then you sort of told us the last one. Trying to just hold everything in my head again was was really difficult.
It is. I think we forget that out in the world. I wanted a room with no silly codes, no fucking around with numbers, and I wanted something spatial where it was all about the movement of an object in a space with other objects, which for an audio-based show is possibly not the best listing. You guys be the judge. But challenging, certainly, hopefully. Because I think definitely the easiest way to do a puzzle is something, makes numbers, make answers. I was looking back on my previous ones and thinking, oh God, actually an awful lot of it is kind of just that, but dressed up in a different way, which is not just me. I think the escape room industry is very guilty of that. We've got a directional padlock. Let's find some way to make directions somehow and then put this directional padlock on a door that you now must open. Or we've got another 4-digit combination lock. Let's insert numbers into something for no fucking reason. And even rooms that otherwise have pretty good theming or a pretty good setting or setup, there's an awful lot of that still, I think. So I wanted to do something that was completely devoid of that. And I was chortling away to myself when, actually, so the seashells one, where 5 and 5, what I should have done, I should have had numbers in the glass tubes too.
Oh.
I did think that when Jamie said it, I was like, more than likely, but also that seems kind of simple. And I was like, I bet we're going to put FIVE into those indentations, and it's not going to work.
I suppose,
and there's something more to it.
One way to, I suppose, cloak it a little bit would be potentially, rather than doing the numeral 5, would be to have 5 individual shells, like an image of 5 shells. So you go, hang on, there's 5 shells, but there's only 4 indentations. What does that potentially mean? I like the physicality of the rest of the room. You're right, especially in the audio setting. We rely, it's weird how much we do rely and fall back on traditional escape room logic.
It is, isn't it? But we do.
But we've got so much, like we could do anything. But we fall back on the tropes, which is interesting. But I think that's where a lot of like the bits that I couldn't figure out in this were due to, is because I come at it with an escape room internal logic. Okay, this has a code, this fits this lock, and I've got that mentality. Whereas if it's a physical space where you have to move things and things work as they do in the real world, like if you squeeze a puff of fish and air comes out and then you let it go and water comes in, my brain just goes, nope, that's not information that's relevant to you right now. Although it clearly does.
I mean, the fact that it was a puff of fish maybe something like, I don't know, maybe a bellows or something that more clearly operates in that way. Like, I don't know, he gives you a big beach ball full of air and you squeeze it to put the air, or something like that. I don't know what it would be, but something that more clearly signaled that it had this capability early on without signposting.
Yeah. I mean, I think what you did worked. I think we just ignored it, to be honest. We just thought it was part of the introduction.
I did bury it,
and I
buried it heavily.
Certainly, we could have experimented more with the pufferfish.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, we'll offer it up and see if it does anything sort of autonomously, right?
I felt a bit bad dismissing that because you said, you just sort of put the pufferfish to the tube. Does anything happen? And I thought, well, no, not
exactly.
really. But at the same time, I'd feel wrong sort of going, you're on the right track. So I just let it drop, and then you abandoned the pufferfish completely. I felt bad, wondering, have I been overly harsh there? Should I have?
Yeah. No, I always think it's a hard line to walk, right? Between giving, if somebody says, "Oh, can I do this?" then you can say yes or no, right? And that would be right to. But if someone's merely not even properly interacting with something, I know. Tony's called me up before because I can't quite remember what it was. It was one of the Christmas episodes that we did, the Scrooge one, A Christmas Carol. And I think he was like, I look at the table. And I was like, yeah, fine, it's a table. But then there was something on the table, right? or under the table. I can't remember what now. And he was like, but I've already interacted with that. And I was like, not really in the way that,
It's so hard because in the real world, you either see it or you don't based on you. And so many escape rooms, the find is a huge part of it. Just being able to look through a place and pick out the important items from the noise is a huge part of it. When you're describing everything, that's very difficult to accurately do.
An analogy of, I think, what I've done in the past is, there's a bookshelf and it's full of books, right? And I'm not going to go through every single book, but if you can think of something that you'd like to check for, I'll tell you whether it's there or not. Kind of
finding a way to simulate the team looking at something with fresh eyes.
But I dare say, John, if we were stumbling in those last few minutes, you'd have maybe revised how you dealt with us. Wrongly interacting with the pufferfish.
I'd have let you drown.
Just easier. Yeah, I like this.
You stay beneath the waves until the bubbles stop. The end.
Short and sweet, like the remainder of our lives.
No, yes. You basically sold the rest of the room ahead of time once you'd cracked that. Quite weird, actually, because most of the rooms that we do, and most rooms in real life, they reveal things piece by piece. You can't even see the next challenge until you've done this challenge. Whereas this one, everything was visible, but nothing worked until you'd done something. So you'd untangled the entire room, but you hadn't cracked the first thing. And once you'd done that, you knew exactly what to do with everything.
In some cases, just very quickly, I think in some cases that makes it more hard, right? Because you've got something hiding in plain sight there. You've laid everything out, and you've got to figure out how everything fits together, and it's not given to you piecemeal.
Yes, yeah. There's a danger of information overload.
Yeah,
which is such a thing. I think of that these days a slightly lazy design. Like if you go into a room and there's just a bunch of stuff. Yeah, and you get laden down with props that could have something to do with each other, but also could not. We did a room, actually the last physical room I did, where you ended up with a bunch of paper props. I don't like too many of those anyway, to be honest with you. And some of them were thematically related, like tickets and passports, for example, but had nothing to do with one another. And I was livid because I was like, you can't give people paper props like that look so clearly linked and are not.
And they're also riddled with text that you're going to waste so much time trying to find any kind of connection or pattern.
Yeah. It's just that's a recipe for people diving into the weeds in a very frustrating way.
Yeah. And it's a fine balance to strike between getting a scene or a set that feels real and lived in, but isn't like full of clutter that's irrelevant. So bookcases used to be one of my favorite things in an escape room because you go, there's going to be a hidden code in a book. There's going to be a secret bookcase. Now they kind of piss me off because I'm like, either those books are glued shut which means there's going to be one that triggers a hidden bookcase, or they're full of actual books that I'm going to have to fucking rifle through just in case there's a secret compartment or a highlighted doobrey.
Yeah. That is annoying.
I guess it's that balance, right, between open world versus having the guardrails up at the 10-pin bowling.
Yes.
It's striking that balance between the two. Maybe just one of the
Everyone thinks they're good at bowling until they've gutted 3 in a row.
Yeah, I suppose.
And then they suggest that maybe we can all play with the guardrails up, I suppose that's the difference between an escape room as a game versus the likes of immersive theatre. It's where you are on that spectrum. So on escape rooms as a game, I got a call the other day, and the old room I used to work for was closed. It was the owner telling me, and basically asking me if I wanted to buy some of the computer and tech that ran the thing and maybe sell it on. And we chatted about that. So I was a bit sad about that because I put I might actually do one of those. Oh, that might be a fun podcast episode. I might just recreate one.
That'd be cool.
Show. And you guys could go through a real room that I had a pretty massive role in designing. So that'd be fun. It'd be a bit tricky to do, but I think it's possible. So yeah, might do that. Be an extra long one though, because it was an hour-long room. Anywho, when we were putting those rooms together, we were very keen that failure was possible. And my aim was to make failure okay with the right kind of debrief, right? Because I feel like for a game, you have to be able to suffer a defeat. Otherwise, there's no sweetness in the victory.
Yeah.
You can get a better time, sure you can. But especially once you've chucked in a flexible clue system, a better time can kind of be artificially created anyway. And that potentially cheapens things. So I firmly believe that you should be able to fail. And then you should be adult enough to discuss and maybe learn from your failure. But this notion seems to be falling by the wayside in the industry. More and more rooms basically don't let you fail. They'll kind of nurse you along until you get there, no matter what. And I can see why people are doing it, I think, because I think it plays better with the public.
Yeah.
It's really hard to make defeat feel good.
Yeah, I think having that positive ending of finishing a room, whether you're there for 59 minutes or you're there for 20 minutes, that dopamine hit of exiting the room is probably a bigger lasting impression in terms of getting reviews on TripAdvisor than it was a solidly built room. We didn't get out, but Jesus, what a good room that was.
Yeah. And it's also, I think, even relatively seasoned escapists, what do we call them? But even relatively seasoned escapists, it's amazing how quickly they start to blame the room if they don't do well.
Yeah.
Amazingly how quickly. And because I GM'd loads of games with these 2 rooms, so I knew both rooms very intimately and how they could be solved and how better teams did and worse teams did. And some teams, like, sorry guys, you just fucked it up. You just fucked it up. You took some wrong conclusions, usually because you decided how something worked before you'd let it show you how it worked. And even people who really ought to have known better exhibited what I saw as tremendous immaturity. Yeah, lack of self-reflection. Some didn't. Some were brilliant, and some, failed and then realized why, or had a slow time and realized why and kicked themselves that they hadn't spotted that thing. But fine. And some people just blame the game.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's on the rise.
Yeah. I wonder if it's because it's a paid for thing, so they've got to keep the punters happy, and they feel they've wasted the cash. Do you remember when video games were hard? Oh, they are for me, because I'm in my late 30s.
But when video games were brutally difficult, and there were lots of games that you never got to the end to because you couldn't. You couldn't figure out how to beat it, and you'd move on to something else. And maybe you'd go back 3 months later, and then suddenly it would click. Had that a couple of times, and that's a lovely thing. You come back to something.
Have I told you about my experience of Portal?
Oh, do tell.
The game. So I everyone was going crazy about Portal, and I read basically nothing about it. But everyone was going crazy about it, and I started playing it. And I got to one of these rooms. When you're still in the test facility, and I just could not get it. You had to it was a timing thing that I just could not get, and I got utterly pissed off with it, and just was like, fuck this. and then like 2 or 3 years later came back to it, breezed through it, and then you escape the facility. I was like, it wasn't just a bunch of like puzzle rooms. I genuinely could not understand why everyone was going crazy about this game.
Did you fail the tutorial of Pure Portal?
I failed the tutorial of Portal. I did. Yeah.
I've never played Portal. I've seen like videos and stuff. I've never played it. Some poor developer going, no, not the good bits around the corner. No, don't stop. Oh.
Ben's like, there's not even a portal. What the fuck? I'm just walking through this thing. When's the portal going to show up? I had a similar moment with a play-at-home puzzle game a couple of years back. I got a game called Legend: A Game of Maps. And there was one particular bit where there was like a long handwritten letter from this sort of Spanish conquistador kind of character and loads of different punch cards with holes strategically placed on them.
And you put it over the letter.
Put it over the letter, and he revealed the secret message. Great. But we couldn't figure out the next step. And we spent hours trying everything. There was no hint system at the time because it was just one guy doing stuff, selling stuff on Etsy. And we gave up on it. Put it on the shelf, left it, ignored it. About 10 months later, I bring it down, and then suddenly I have a brainwave that puts it in, it rearranges the punch cards in a different order, and then a different message emerges, and I'm just, oh my fucking God. Just the dopamine spike from that. Like, right, get over here. And then we blitz the thing the following night.
I have the answer.
In those two examples, right, Portal and the game that you played, Jamie, you owned them, right?
Yeah.
So you could go back to them. Whereas an escape room experience is, I guess you'd probably be somewhat lucky if the escape room still existed, right? Because I guess that certain companies will recycle rooms and it'll be only on for a certain amount of time. Plus, it's generally not like, oh, I'll pay a tenner and do it again. It's a bit of a financial investment. I wonder though, like, there must be different mechanics of making it passable, right? Sure, you could increase hints and stuff, but maybe even saying you get 90 minutes rather than 60. Just
So some rooms are longer, 90-minute slots. There was a time when Team Squared came to play our rooms, and they're I think reasonably well known. Done thousands of games, and they were as consultants and things. And hello, Team Squared, if you're listening. You're probably not, but if you're not, hello. And they were chatting to me about failure and victory after they'd done our rooms. And they said one possible strategy is victory and then more victory. So everyone gets out, but say for a bank heist, which one of the rooms was, you got out, but how much of the loot did you get? How much of the money did you get? Did you figure out how much of the money was real and how much was fake? And get out with a container. You know, there's another way of adding further possibility for success on top of the success. And nobody fails, but there's a whole sort of further ladder to climb, which allows you to succeed more above and beyond just getting a quick time. So there's something in that, I think. But I don't know, man. I think it's healthy to be comfortable with the idea of failing and maybe learning from it. Oh God, that sounds twatty, doesn't it?
Do you know, you've been saying all this stuff, and it's really interesting to look back and see how you've actually brought all this and actually introduced a lot of it to the Infinite Escape Room.
Have I?
I want to say that your World War II puzzle, I think it was I think one of the very first puzzles that was ever failable. We'd always
it was a trench warfare one.
Yeah, and you introduced effectively the alternative ending. You did it on the hoof, if I remember rightly.
Yes. Sounds like me.
Yeah. So that was obviously a direct carryover from what you were doing sort of day to day at the time.
Well, one. Oh, failing.
Maybe.
Then I fail every day.
But also, where you said about how teams assume something works before actually letting it reveal to you. There's a puzzle that I wasn't in. I'm sure Alan and Mike were there, and I can't remember who else. And I want to say there was a sword or something like that would. It was a time traveling puzzle, and there was a mechanic of that everyone sort of assumed how it worked, and I don't think it had actually been fully revealed to them how it worked, and that got pretty heated when you were like, no, it works like this, and they were like, no, how could it work like that?
was this me again?
I think that was the one.
Yes.
Was this the crucifixion?
Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you travel back in time to the crucifixion of Jesus and give him a ladder.
Classic.
I can't remember. Quite possibly.
It was all in a big church. And the whole point was to get the ladder into the past so that it would be in the church in the future so you could climb out.
Quite possibly.
Yeah. And there was an argument about how the time portal worked, basically, and like how you could get things through it. Yeah, and it did get a bit heated. It did get a bit heated. So there is conflict there. I think it's worth it.
I mean, how do you, when you said when people should fail, they should fail with a good debrief. Like, how did you tackle that in the escape room?
So, okay, yeah, it's a good question, actually. So when people failed, for a start, I would be relentlessly positive about their game. So I'd talk a fair bit about the stuff they did well. And then we'd go into what they failed on. And to be honest, it would usually go the other way around, because usually they fail the game, time runs out, they die or whatever. And you walk in and you go, "I'm sorry, guys, you ran out of time." And they say, "What were we missing? What was the problem? I don't understand. This is bullshit." Something of the above. So you start there, which is great, actually, because then you can start with the defeat and then polish it up by talking about the stuff they did solve quickly. So I'd always try and do it that way around. And I talk pretty frankly, to be honest. And I talk frankly about the hints that the room gives them about that. So you see this over there, guys. That's called words. If you read the words, they will tell you everything you need to know. You do have to understand them. So eyes and brain, people, eyes and brain. No, not like that, obviously. But there was almost always either they'd missed something obvious, a failure of communication. So there was one that involved a tape recorder, and I had a couple of teams where someone would find the tape recorder. Now, the tape recorder has no batteries. At the end of the game, you have to find some batteries. And people search the entire room for these batteries with their torches. And they have to realize the batteries are in the torches.
Gotcha.
There are no batteries in the room. And we had a couple of nice hints for this. So everyone knows that torches are batteries. Everyone knows this. No one thinks that your torch is plugged in. So it must have batteries. And we even bought torches made by Energizer, just so it had the brand of a battery on the side of the torch, just to really twist the knife. So some people would screw that up and just not click. And other people, one of them would find the tape recorder, realize it didn't work, and then put it away again. And go, "Oh, it's just a prop." And they'd put it back in this lockbox they found it in and tell nobody. And you'd look on in horror, going, no, that's crucial. And not only have you dismissed it when you shouldn't have, you've then hidden it for the rest of your piece.
No one's allowed to see that.
No.
What's in that drawer? Fuck off. No. The torch thing.
Exactly. So there was usually some explainable specific disaster. People would put things in their pockets that were crucial and forget they were in there.
I do that.
I did have one team have a super bad reaction, and I'd have brought it up on the show before. It was very briefly. It was the guy with the lock boxes and the key chain, and he tried to brute force the puzzle several times and got there in the end by luck, but wasted 15 minutes doing so, and claimed in his Google review 1 star. And his TripAdvisor review, also 1 star, claimed that I'd called him the weakest link, which he was.
I didn't say to his face, but...
No, I don't think I say it to his face. But the reason I bring it up is because I think the reason that rooms shy away from a defeat ending is that. It's that guy.
Yeah.
Because even if someone is an asshole, if they blame the room and decide to vent their frustrations on the internet, it is so damaging to the business to receive a negative review like that you can't get rid of. So damaging. It's just not worth the risk.
Yeah. And it's this...
And I think we're all poorer for it, because it means that rooms have to pander to people who can't handle a defeat, which means that the rest of us get a worse challenge as a result.
Yeah, that's fair. On the flip side, you get those, at least in the early days, you get those rooms that boasted about how this room only has a 25% escape rate. It's hardcore.
There's much less than that now.
Because people are like, I'm not going to pay 30 quid to spend an hour banging my head against a wall and get nowhere.
I don't think it's even that. I think because we had a hard mode on our original room where you basically got only story prompts, no hints. And this was voluntary. You could sign up for it. And our idea was that it would be a totally level playing field, so people could do a kind of Hall of Fame times thing. But what we immediately found, within weeks of opening, we killed it, because the people who signed up for it were the worst kind of people to do.
All bravado kind of thing?
All bravado. Or maybe some experience, but all bravado, determination, very inflexible minds, just not good people to be in that kind of very competitive game mode at all. But it's like, it's like cops, isn't it? The people who decide to be cops are the worst people to be cops. Sorry, cops. Also teachers. Lawyers.
I was just say, so that was going to be one of my suggestions, is that every morning I play a game of solitaire, because there's an app on my phone that does a daily challenge of solitaire, and I've been playing it since like 2013, so I can't stop now.
Ben, I'm going to steal your phone one day.
He's going to steal a stranger's phone and install it just for that one day.
Yeah.
I know I've missed days here and there, but you can always go back and. But in the rest of the app, if you're just playing solitaire, you can turn a setting on which basically says every game is solvable, right? Because there are configurations of solitaire that are just not.
Can fuck you.
It just is not solvable, because through no fault of
the
your own.
cards are fallen in such a way that it cannot be done.
Exactly, and it's not that you want that mechanic, because you want it. You don't want it to be. You don't want your escape room to be unsolvable, but you almost wanted. I was thinking a mechanic whereby you can say at the very beginning, "Hey, do you want to win, or do you want the option
to be able to fail?
Do you want to be able to fail?" Right? But to be honest, that kind of sounds like that hard mode that you were alluding to.
You're basically asking people what ending they want, aren't you?
Well, you are and you are.
You're saying,
right?
do you want the good ending locked in?
Exactly. Yes.
Does that cheapen the victory, though, knowing that?
I think it does, because you also then get that annoying thing, and the last room I played had this, where they've clearly got sort of time sections up on a wall somewhere, so they should take 15 minutes to do this bit, and 10 minutes to do this bit, and 10 minutes to do that bit. And the thin veneer of, you're a secret agent, and I'm your spy runner, and I'm radioing in advice, just fell away almost immediately with, okay, guys, we're coming up to time on this section. Would you like a clue? And I get it, because you know how long all these things take, and you don't want us to be left with 30 seconds to do puzzles that should take 10 minutes, because that's no fun, and that's why you're moving us on. And I get that, but at the same time, there's something lost.
I think going back to the torch and the tape recorder batteries, it's. I wonder how much of that is the psychology of this torch is a part of the game world. I'm a player. This is my game prop to help me see. This is part of the story world.
So at the beginning of the game, you were given a briefcase full of your equipment to rob the bank, and the torches are in the briefcase, along with a bomb and like various other things that you use in the game. So everything in the briefcase is a tool that you use to do your job, and it's very much placed in the game world. We don't use the torches at the beginning and check they work with you and all of that stuff. No, it's all in there as your in-world equipment. Is it cheeky that you have to deconstruct one of them in an unexpected way? Yes. However, interestingly, newbie teams nailed that all the time. And
so it makes me wonder whether people that are more experienced will have gone through the whole. So my physical experience for escape rooms, I've only done 2, maybe 3. But they've always been after starting the escape room, and always with people that are seasoned players. And so the whole you don't break anything, right? It was already sort of there for me, because you forfeit your deposit or whatever. And I wonder whether newbies, having actually done one of escape room with some people that had never done any escape rooms before, they were trying to twist lights off the wall and that kind of thing. And I wonder whether maybe a newbie is just a bit more happy to inadvertently break something, right?
A newbie has not been institutionalized. Yes. Basically, I think it comes down to, and this returns to what we were discussing at the very top of it, with like the predominance of combination locks in the rooms that we make for this show. And that is a result of us being institutionalized by our escape room experience as to what a puzzle is and what an acceptable problem to solve is in this room. In the bank job room, the final problem that you had to solve, and I can speak about it now fully because it's closed, was put the batteries in the thing that obviously needs batteries. Take the batteries out of the thing that obviously has them. My experience of watching veteran players screw that up and newbie players reliably get it told me that people don't just get better at escape rooms, they get worse.
I was going to say what would be rather delicious is if they had to construct the torches to begin with. So you had torches and like batteries rumbling around the bag, right? And just to see if they remembered they did it.
To see the battery. Yeah. That would also mean that a certain proportion of people would put the battery in the wrong way around and then immediately turn to a camera and go, the torch don't work.
Flip it upside down, you fuck.
And I know this. Because the tape recorder battery slot, these were AA batteries, is labelled clearly. And when we were setting up, we looked at it and went, yeah, there's decent enough light in here. You can see those labels. It's clear. Lots of people read the label, put the battery in. Some people put the batteries in, immediately said the tape recorder was broken. There were several games where I had to come out, join the team, and put the batteries in the tape recorder correctly, and then press play.
It reminds me, though, of stories that I have from the computing world. Not that I have experienced myself, but there's sort of the old favourite of every morning on a Monday at 4 a.m. This server powers off. I mean, no one can figure out why, and you run all this diagnostics of it, and then next Monday it turns around, turns off again, and half an hour later comes back up. And you cannot figure it out. You do not understand why all the logs don't show any kind of crashes or anything like this, and it just sort of brings itself back up again, which also shouldn't happen. And finally, you install CCTV and find that the cleaner unplugs it every morning, so that she can plug his
in. That's brilliant. Cleaner comes in, and I just unplug that, plug my head in. Don't forget to plug it back in before I go.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's gotten to the point now with escape rooms. You know, when you see those old animations like Tom and Jerry and those kinds of things, where the background is a certain color, but there's one part of that scene that's a different shade to the rest, and you go,
yeah,
that's going to
move.
You get the same thing now with like secret panels and bookcases and shit. You walk into the first room of escape and you see a seam and go, well, that's a secret panel that's going to open. That's a secret door.
Yeah. That's a brilliant way of describing it, Jamie. That's really lucid. It's exactly like that. You see a scene, and what you should take in as a complete scene, you immediately focus on the bit.
Yeah, all right, it's fine. It is what it is. But you lose that sense of, oh my god, the wall shifted, and there's a room. That's room. Gone. Yeah. And that's such a big part of an escape room experience beyond the puzzles. That it's a shame that gets lost the more you do. If we can lobotomize escape room players after a certain number of rooms, never mind cake to celebrate, as is the standard in the industry, let's get mandatory lobotomies for anyone who does more than 100 rooms so they can retain that sense of wonder.
I wonder, though, does that also not, to some degree, reflect the production, right? Because if you have, say, a bookcase that moves, you're going to, presumably, if you had the time and money you can make it to make it perfect. And I guess some of it does come to the fact that you've got to have a startup capital that you've got, right, and then only what you're charging go on, plus the general wear and tear of all this stuff as well, right? You might quite like
stuff has to be so bomb-proof.
Yeah.
No, we had the Steve test, which is where the builder of the room, who was Steve and was a builder. The Steve test was he takes the prop and he hurls it onto the floor as hard as he can. If it still works and it still looks okay, it's past the Steve test. If it doesn't, we can't use it. And it's because people do that shit.
Yeah.
And if that prop's 20 quid and you burn through that every 5 games, that's not sustainable.
Yeah.
So it ends up with a lot of simple things or like cheap stuff. And the startup capital thing's a massive problem. So I think the industry is contracting quite badly right now. I think we're losing a lot of rooms. I mean, the one I used to work at for a start. But it's not just them that are in trouble. I know several rooms locally that are in huge trouble and may well be gone soon. And it's not because they're bad rooms. One of them is like a brilliantly immersive cinematic experience, really incredible production values. It was not guilty of that criticism of being paper thin at all. They're still in danger of going under. So I don't know what the answer is. I'd love to say it's just make the best room you can. And if it's good, people will come, but I'm not sure they will.
Well, and that's the other problem as well, right?
Right now,
depending on where you are as well, you only have a limited set of people that will come and play. As people in London probably don't have this because there's so many people coming through London, right? But which also then means that you've got to have a few rooms. You can't just have one. So instantly you're splitting your capital 2, 3, 4 ways.
Replayability, yeah.
And then you've got to refresh them, right? You reimagine them, which isn't.
So the chaps at Control Alt Escape reckon 5 years.
That seems consistent, yeah.
Which actually is longer than other estimates I've heard. That they reckon. So they're moving to a system where they run 5 rooms, and every year they do a room.
Oh, wow!
Which is big,
they're going
right?
to cycle through. Yeah, it's a pretty big space. Some of the rooms are small and some much bigger, but yeah, they're looking at a 5-year cycle ongoing, which I think is okay. Wouldn't want to go any longer.
No, I think this is a good opportunity to put a call out to our listeners. Support your local escape room. Go online right now. Book a session in with somebody close to you or further afield. Don't give a fuck. Get in there and play the room and keep the industry alive. Just do it. Just go.
I think I don't think it's dying, but I think sadly a lot of the smaller players are dying because they don't have as deep pockets or as bigger marketing machines. And I think we're drifting towards rooms that are actually a lot less to do with puzzle solving and discovery and lateral thinking, all that stuff, and more to do with, that was a really cool experience. The lighting and music were amazing, which I'm just not interested in. I'm just not interested in the theme park with some padlocks. Yeah.
And when theme parks have tried that, Universal Studios did an escape room, and apparently it was shit. They did Back to the Future and Jurassic Park, I think. Themed.
They could be awesome, right?
Bad.
Apparently, the reviews. If you look at, I think Room Escape Artist reviewed it. They were dire.
Really?
Yeah. It was all fur coat and no trousers.
I was going to say, you can imagine them relying so heavily on the gravity of the franchises that they perhaps put so much effort into everything else.
Yeah, I've heard similar criticisms for the Lara Croft experience in London, where it's meant to be a big theatrical escape room, but it's not great puzzles, and you're shepherded along on a timer, like you mentioned, John. Every section is like, right, you got to go now, because they're just funneling people through, and
because they've got another group behind them. So I live GM'd a room once, temporary pop-up room. I'm sure I've mentioned it before on the show, so again, I won't go into too much detail. But basically, it was cops at a crime scene, and there were 4 crime scenes. And it wasn't a room you could buy a ticket for. It was all invite only for country TV people, basically, and influencers. Which you want to see some useless escape room players, influencers. Trust me. Oh my giddy aunt! That when the apocalypse comes, they're getting eaten. They have no place in the world. Anyway. But the way it worked, it was actually brilliantly designed. Oh, actually, shout out to what's his surname? The guys from Deadlocked, Charlie Bond,
James Hammer Morton,
and James
Hammer Morton.
James Hammer Morton. Hello, guys. They did this. They created this thing. It was their baby for a TV channel, and basically, you were in the room, the section with your team, and we had earpieces in, and each section was 15 minutes. So you hinted them as you needed to, approaching that 15 minutes. And as they were finishing puzzles, you were quietly putting the evidence back and resetting the entire thing behind them as they went. There was also a light very high up in each space, which was controlled by a panel in the room that only you had access to. So you could signal to the guy behind you or the woman behind you, I'm ready, or this room is ready, or it is not ready. So you always knew, do I have to keep filling, or can I go through as soon as this is ready? And you walk into a freshly reset room.
Ooh.
It was ingenious, absolutely ingenious. The tragedy of it was that it wasn't very busy, even though it was invite only. So we very rarely had to run the thing at full tilt to take advantage of this brilliant system for a rolling live GM'd room. So that was a little bit sad. But the principle was sound. So it can be done. You can have a sectioned room, but you've got to hire good people. Yeah. They hired a bunch of actors to do this who were comfortable riffing, basically. And it was great. You got to like scream at somebody who's squeamish to stick their hand in a dead body and pull out a USB stick. It was brilliant fun.
I was going to say, I feel that that we've had this experience when we did the corporate gig several years ago. But of course, the reset is nothing, right?
Yeah, I get shivers thinking about
There is no reset. You just
take a breath again. Just take a shot and then carry on.
That was hard.
Good fun. But it was tense.
It was good fun, but it was hard.
If you would like to hire us for a corporate gig, please get in touch.
Yeah, and once we've finished our heart medication, we will try and produce it.
You just say that our prices have gone up considerably.
Yes.
To pay for said heart medication.
We made a few quid each out of that thing, but nothing commensurate to the hours that went in. Or the horrendous dress rehearsal with friends and family where everything went wrong.
Yeah.
And it was just a disaster. Right, I think I hear the bell for last orders tolling, gentlemen. Do you have any last topics you'd like to discuss? Anything that's driven you mad in your soul?
I just wish to say that such a pub as this establishment is, I would imagine that they have a pump with
here it comes,
the Margate Effluents. I can have a pint of the Margate Effluent.
To be honest, there could be a beer called the Margate Effluent. Ben, I'm not ruling this out as a thing.
That's an alternative name for the pub, though, as well. That's quite a nice one, the Margate Effluents.
The Margate Effluent.
Right on the coast. Don't ask what's in the ale.
Maybe I'll choose next. Yes, because we don't know.
I'd like to give a quick recommendation. I've come to this late, and I really regret doing so. Is the
fatherhood?
Well, yeah, I was 30. Which by Welsh Valley standards, I'm practically barren. Let's be honest.
This is true.
But the TV show The Traitors, the UK version.
Oh, not this.
I came to it late, and I started watching season 2, and I have become enamored with it. I love it so much. It's so good. And I love the game that it's loosely based on, Ultimate Werewolf, and I know that it's based on other games that are similar as well. But the premise is great. Bunch of people together trying to win some cash, do some tasks, but every night somebody gets murdered, and every day somebody gets banished, and there are certain traitors within the group that are murdering everybody else. And the aim of the traitors is to murder everybody and win the cash. The aim of the people who aren't traitors is to find out who the traitors are and oust them and win the cash themselves. So it's quite a fun psychology experiment. And the game that it's based on, Werewolf, is phenomenal, and the show is very addicting.
We watched one episode of season 1 and it turned us off completely.
Oh, shame. Try season 2. I didn't see season 1. We came in season 2 and I thought it was great. But if you're not a fan of that kind of social deduction game, that might not be for you, but I recommend it.
Oh, I feel like that was a veiled way of calling me stupid.
Oh, no.
If you're not a fan of that sort of brilliant social deduction game that uses your mind, well, I can't do anything for you.
Some folk don't like that kind of genre for their games, and that's fine. But like, it's
now I'm folk.
It's had so many. Everyone's folk, John. We're all folk here. It's had loads of spin-offs for like US, Australia, and all sorts.
Of course it has.
As TV is wont to do. But yeah, the UK version is great. Please do give it a try.
Okay, fine. The Traders. I'm going to recommend something. I'm going to recommend a book. And my book recommendation is Why We Get the Wrong Politicians by Isabel Hartman. I'm only halfway through it, and it is a excoriating account of life in Parliament by a journalist who was there for years, talking to MPs, interviewing MPs during Cameron's years. Right? And she went around with him a fair bit too. But it's not just, they're all a bunch of greedy bastards, blah, blah, blah. It's an examination of the process of becoming a politician and the process of both life and work in Parliament and how things are actually done and why that produces such middling results at best. Why do we have so many badly conceived laws? Why do we have so many scandals? Why do we seem to have deadlock over the stupidest issues? Why do ministers seem to change every 5 minutes? And seem to be somehow unable to do anything in their actual brief. There is a reason for all of it. And I imagine when she gets to the conclusion of her book, she's going to give some prescriptions for some medicine. I don't know what they are yet, but I know they're going to be good. So, yeah, if you're in any way interested in British politics, and I mean actually about how it works and why it is the way it is, for a tiny sample, fun fact, you're not allowed to clap in the House of Commons. There's no clapping. It's against convention, which is why MPs make those stupid brewing brain noises, because they're not allowed to clap. But no one knows this, so you just watch them do it and think, you're a bunch of animals. What is wrong with you? And it's because there's no clapping, no rounds of applause. Really, really.
There's a really good series on YouTube by comedian Jay Foreman that looks at a Parliament in London specifically and talks about the whole braying nonsense as well. But that book sounds fascinating.
It's wonderful. Why We Get the Wrong Politicians by Isabel Hardman. Ben, got a recommendation?
I wasn't aware that I needed to bring one.
On the spot. It's a new thing.
So I don't think I don't think I do.
That's
Fatherhood. Wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah, done.
I would
tie those tubes.
Highly recommend it over getting a dog.
But both? No.
Why? What happened to the dog?
Oh, the dog's fine. The dog's lovely, but the dog's not going to look after me in old age, and I'm hoping my son will.
It's an investment, like a tortoise. I like it.
And on that note, we will stumble back towards both our beds and rapidly approaching old age.
I'm going clubbing. Where's the 80s club?
You're going clubbing in
Is that
I think it's
mint original or orange?
Oh, always mint.
Oh,
always
geez. Mint. Okay. Right. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're still with us, thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed that meandering chat. And we will see you next time on the Infinite Escape Room. Good night.
Nighty night.
Very well.